Cheers, welcome to Cinebust. Michael, I just watched this one last night. I was anticipating watching this one for a little while. When I first heard that this movie was being made, I was kind of like, how are they going to pull this off? Because Michael Jackson himself was kind of more of a, I don't know, like a caricature than a real person. So how are they going to do this without it seeming really, really silly? In real life, he didn't come off as really, really silly, but that's because he was playing a role. It's a bit. But how do you cast someone to play someone who was playing some sort of alter ego? Reviewers say Michael delivers an electrifying experience anchored by Jafar Jackson's Oscar-worthy, transformative performance that authentically embodies the king of pop. The outstanding dance choreography, stellar musical sequences, and exceptional cast performances create a visually engaging celebration. However, the film disappoints with its underdeveloped surface-level story that lacks momentum and fails to explore what shaped Michael's genius. Yeah, that kind of sums it up. See you later. Okay, so I watched it last night with my family. My kids are 13 and 8 years old, and we popped some popcorn, we had some cookies, and of course I had plenty of cocktail, and we watched this movie. It was kind of what I was expecting. There really weren't any surprises. This is probably the most middle of the road movie I've seen in a very long time. It just doesn't even try to be controversial. It doesn't try to ask questions. It doesn't dive deeper than a shallow, 1 foot deep pool into who Michael Jackson was or really what shaped him. I was hoping that it'd be a little bit more gritty. Anton Fuqua is the one who directed it, and of course he did Training Day and whatnot, so he's capable of developing some great characters, some suspenseful moments, and surprises, and really shoots something so it feels like you're really there. And I just felt like this movie didn't hit any of that. It starts out with the Jackson 5, and we're in the house in Gary, Indiana. I remember my first experiences with his music was when I was in middle school, and Off the Wall had been out for a little bit, and Thriller had just come out. And I wasn't really listening to Michael Jackson at the time. And some friends of mine were like, "Oh, you're listening to Michael Jackson?" I'm like, "No, I'm listening to like Hall & Oates and Toto." And I got made fun of because of that. So, I went home. My dad had Michael Jackson records, so I would listen to Michael Jackson. The movie starts out in Gary, Indiana, with the Jackson 5 practicing in the living room, and their father, Joseph, is a perfectionist, right? They never show him as somebody who's really loving, but they do show him as somebody who's driven, and he's really family-oriented. The set design's great. The casting is spot on. I mean, you can't really get any better with the casting in this film. From top to bottom, no one really stood out. I would say the only person who stood out was sort of the weird-looking dude who sort of looked like Vin Diesel. Even for a second, I was like, is that Vin Diesel? And I'm like, okay, it's not Vin Diesel. But it kind of looked like him. It was weird. It was like a Timu knockoff of Vin Diesel, so it was interesting. We get the first glimpse into the monster, that Joseph is, when Michael doesn't take direction very well. He doesn't want to perform. He's tired. So his dad takes off the belt and whips him in front of all his brothers and in front of the mom. So we get a look into like Joseph being a control freak, someone who doesn't really listen, and somebody who just wants to get there fast.
In this life, you're either a winner or you're a loser.
Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
Now the Jackson 5 is performing like fairgrounds and whatnot, and they already have a fan following, so they're moving right along. Then they get discovered, then they go to Motown. So this is like the dream, right? You have Michael, who is, getting older. He's really awkward. He doesn't really have any friends. His brothers are all sort of moving on with relationships, and they're significantly older than Michael too. So, they got a giraffe in the yard, so I guess they can't be doing that bad. Michael's walking a llama, so they must be doing all right. But there's this one scene where he comes home with like Twister, and he's like, "Hey, let's all play Twister." And we're like, "Okay." Cut to Michael in his bedroom with Bubbles, the chimpanzee, playing Twister. I'll have to say too, like the The CGI and Bubbles left a little bit to be desired. I think they might as well have just gotten a real animal. I'm guessing they just didn't want to have an animal that throws shit all over the place. I'm guessing. Now he wants to go solo. That does not bode well for his father. Now, where's the mother in all this? She's there, but she really doesn't have a role. Her role is sit in the corner and either every time Joseph acts like an ass, just turn your head a little bit and go, or, you know, look in shock, like, she really doesn't do anything. Now Michael is going to do a solo album, and his dad's like, okay, you can do it, but you still have to be part of the Jackson 5 during the day. So Michael does the solo album, turns out to be a big hit, right? Puts Michael on the top of the charts. We do get to see Michael interacting with kids a lot, and so they're kind of laying the groundwork of his fondness for children, innocence of children. Of course, he didn't have a childhood, so I think, he connects with kids better than he does with any of the adults. The last tour with Jackson 5, Michael, makes an announcement that he's not going to be singing with his brothers anymore, which kind of sucks, right? It's like in the middle of right in the end of the song, he's like, yeah, fuck these guys, I'm going off on my own, without talking to the dad. The dad's got all these plans. They're in sold out arenas. Michael's able to cover his own music, but for some reason he wants to, remove the shackles from his life and move on. And they have the Peter Pan book throughout the whole thing, and they have Wizard of Oz, so you can get into his head a little bit about what's going on in his mind when he's looking at Peter Pan and whatnot. And Neverland, he's starting to be obsessed with that. They have a lot of Disney stuff too, which is kind of cool, throughout the movie, so that was interesting. I'm sure Disney licensed them all these things, or the rights to be able to show these products, or Mickey Mouse and whatnot. Probably with the understanding the movie wasn't going to be taking any kind of deep dives into Michael Jackson's controversies. I think this movie is so incredibly middle of the road. They spend way too much time on musical numbers. It might as well be a music video. I did like seeing some of the behind the scenes stuff where we get to see them making Thriller. I wanted to see more of that. And Michael's like, can you ask Mr. Landis if he can get us a full shot instead of a close up? Because I want to see, Fred Astaire always said, like, you got to see the feet when you're dancing and whatnot. So, and that's all we really see. They don't touch on the fact that John Landis was a big A-movie director, and now he's doing this music video. What did they decide to spend a lot of time on? His hair getting burned during a Pepsi commercial. But I'm a little confused about the movie. The movie really makes it like he almost lost his life, So was that true? I'm not sure. I haven't really done any additional research on that. But in the movie anyway, he's off to the hospital. He's got an IV for some reason. I don't know why he has an IV. And then they're going to treat his wounds, and I guess they're pretty serious, so the surgery is not going to be great, and he's always going to have like these issues, right? They probably spent more time on that particular thing than they did anything else. Then we move on to him. He's doing Thriller, and they show him sort of working out what he wants to do for Thriller. He's got Post-its, and he's trying to figure it all out, and then he's watching, I believe it's House of Wax with with Vincent Price. The wrong Price, but that Price was right. So Vincent Price, and of course Vincent Price does the voiceover for Thriller, and he decides he's going to do that horror movie thing. And Michael really loves cinema. He loves Three Stooges. He loves Charlie Chaplin, and he wants to make little movies, music videos basically. But Michael Jackson's music videos were not music videos. They were an event. They were a cinematic event. I still remember when we watched Thriller music video world premiere on MTV, and I remember us waiting for the countdown till it comes on, and it was just like mind-blowing. And then I remember the parody too that Joe Piscopo did of the Thriller music video. I could still remember how much I laughed at that parody video, where it just like hurt my stomach because I was laughing so hard, where instead of turning into a zombie, Joe Piscopo turns into Jerry Lewis.
What's wrong?
Go away.
It's pretty funny. You got to go check it out. Joe Piscopo. They only got this movie made because the family was so involved, and they don't want to make a hit piece. They're not trying to make The Doors, and show like really lean into the addiction and all that. Although to me, The Doors is the best musician biography I've ever seen. I love it. What it's got going for itself is that it's safe, it's entertaining enough. It's just a little over 2 hours, so it's not crazy. It's not like a 3-hour epic. I still feel like they got to trim some things out, and they could have made some scenes a little longer. My kids really liked it. Like, they sat through the whole thing. They know Michael Jackson. They know his music and whatnot, probably because of the anime character, too, who looks like Michael Jackson. They were just really fully engaged and asking questions during the whole movie. I don't know, they really gravitated to it because it was accessible, and it wasn't over the top, and it wasn't jarring. In this version of the life in this movie, my kids, like my daughter, picked up on the dad being controlling. I don't know, she really kind of got it. Whereas for me, I would have been a little bit more forgiving of that character if it wasn't a true life story. I'd have been like, give the guy a break, man. He's broke and he's got this great family, and they're all gonna conquer the world together. And so you have to break a few omelets. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. I did like to see the scene where MTV was forced to play Michael Jackson videos, or the label would pull all their roster from the MTV lineup.
If you don't play Billie Jean in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to pull every CBS artist from your lineup.
And they touched a little bit on his skin and his nose job and all that. And they didn't really even go that far into that, because I know that he was obsessed with Diana Ross, but they didn't mention her at all. So he kind of wanted to look like Diana Ross, and they didn't touch on that at all, which I think is kind of important when you consider that he's going into plastic surgery to make himself look like Diana Ross. There's a lot of really troubling behaviors that beneath the surface of this film are happening, but they never go there. They never travel to it. They just kind of let you fill in the gaps, I guess. And then if you're a child or a kid, you really don't need to know all those details. You might be a little too young to really understand them, and they might be really distracting from the story because it's rough stuff, right? So in that respect, I kind of really thought the movie was a little genius, unless I'm overthinking it. I felt like they really made a movie where for people like me who know more about Michael Jackson's history can fill in the gaps, right? We can understand what's happening. Whereas it appeals to the younger generations because it really just kind of goes right to what everyone loves about Michael Jackson, and that's his music. I'm kind of thinking it did that on purpose, which is pretty genius because that's tough to do. And this movie I also think happened because of Jafar Jackson. Like, now's the time. Like, we need to do this movie now because this is the only person in the entire world that can pull this off. Like, anybody else would not be able to pull this off. It'd be heavy prosthetics, or they wouldn't even bother making him look like Michael Jackson, which would be very distracting. And then with the voice and with all the antics and the animals and whatnot, and the freaking CGI monkey, I think the movie would have just come off as stupid. Like, there really would be no way to really make it, right? But I think they bring in Antoine Fuqua, because he's a great director, right? And then he's got a great track record. But I think he understood the project. Now, I'm kind of surprised that they're doing a sequel, because that one's going to have to bring up some of those other things in his life that aren't quite as fantastic or magical, right? I have a feeling they're still going to treat it lightly and kind of blame the surroundings and circumstances that led up to his death. I remember I lived in California and I lived in the Los Angeles area when Michael Jackson died. It was a big deal, really big deal. Anyway, am I going to recommend this movie? Am I going to give it a cheers or a jeers? I think this movie is engineered in a way where you cannot dislike it. There's really no argument to be made that it's not a good movie, or that it's not worth watching, or that it's not entertaining. It has been engineered, written, marketed, acted in a way that you just have no choice but to like this movie. So even having a in-depth review of this film doesn't really make any sense, because there is no in-depth to this film. So I am going to give it a cheers for sure. I recommend seeing this movie. I think a lot of people are going to love it. I think a lot of younger people are going to really get a great introduction to Michael Jackson. And for those who lived through all that time and are going to feel a sense of nostalgia. Directed by Antoine Fuqua, acted by Jafar Jackson, I'm going to give this movie a cheers.
You know, I have a burp coming because I just had Coca-Cola like an asshole.